Welcome to Vann Attorneys webinar. J.D. Hensarling and I, James Vann, we will be leading today. J.D., it's always good to hang out with you.
Hey, good to see you. Happy afternoon.
We don't normally sit together, and we usually don't sit this close together.
No,
right?
we don't.
But it's always a joy to help do these webinars, and we get a lot of interaction from y'all. So thank you so much for participating. So today we're going to be talking about new laws in North Carolina that are impacting business. Now, we've got a few in here that JD is going to share with us that are more personal, right? And that's a benefit. It's a freebie for you, right? So
some of these are kind of fun.
They are. Yeah. The legislature, when it's in session, you just never know what you're going to get. So a little bit of homework, right? So our next webinar is on February 22nd at 3 p.m. So go ahead and mark your calendar, please. We hope you'll join us. And if you've got a topic that you want us to cover, we'd love to hear from you because we get some really great topics from y'all. So that's really helpful. Thank you for doing that. And then the other thing is if you have a question today and you want to submit it, you can use the go-to webinar control panel on your screen, or you can send us an email at webinar@vannattorneys.com. And we'll get that either way. So we look forward to that. So JD, thank you again for what you do to make all these things work. So
yeah, looking forward to our conversation.
He's a smart lawyer. It's always my mother always told me to hang out with smart people. And so I'm hoping that that's always the case.
My mom said the same thing.
All right, trying to get this thing to advance here. There we go. All right, so some of the topics we're going to be looking at today, obviously the legislature of North Carolina, what have they passed? And then there's a little bit of a federal, some legislation regarding the Corporate Transparency Act. Easy to write and not as easy to say right now. So as many of y'all know, the General Assembly was in session this year and actually passed quite some really good stuff. So we're going to get started on the consumer finance stuff. So this came out of a Senate bill. And it really talks about consumer finance, where individuals may be financing indebtedness, right? So, and the reason I thought about this is we've got a few clients who I know make loans for other folks, right? It's not uncommon to do that. This is a little bit different, right? Where it requires any person engaging in the business of lending amounts of $15,000 or less, and it's to a consumer, not to another company, but to a consumer. Interest rates higher than those allowed under the usury laws. If you do that, then you have to be licensed under the Consumer Finance Act with the state. And it also requires that the licensee pay an annual assessment to the Commissioner of Banks. And that annual assessment is $18 per $100,000 of assets plus a fee of $30 per office. So again, most of the ones that I know that do this, JD, if you have people that do this or clients that they're thankfully they've got a pool of money that they can lend out, but it's more people. It's not as much they have an office to set that up.
Right.
It's more they're a successful business owner, or they're successful in finance, and then they know people that they make consumer loans.
Yeah, and hopefully they're using a good legal enforceable instrument like a promissory note.
Yeah, that's right. Please do that, and please. I would even say don't buy one online because you never know what it's going to say. But the statute also outlines how the interest is computed pursuant to the Consumer Finance Act. And so I pulled out just a little bit just to make sure I had it in my head because there's a little bit of a formula to it. So under a consumer credit installment sales contract, that is versus if you're going to borrow or lend money to someone, and they're going to pay it back in one lump sum if there's some debt, some payments along with that, right? For an example, it's really interesting how it's written. If it's so 24% per annum where the amount financed is less than $1,500. I thought, man, that's pretty steep.
That's very steep.
22% where the amount is financed is $1,500 or greater. But not less than 2,000. So you can see there's a gradual. Only we would say is this, right? If you're in that world, either reach out to us or your attorney, somebody else who can give you some guidance as to what that looks like. We've got a client who lends money out to businesses, right? So this act would not apply. I could see where if someone were making what habitually, I'm saying that sounds like it's bad, right? Constantly making loans to consumers, if you get crossed up somewhere and then all of a sudden someone reports this to the state, it could create an issue for you. Just wouldn't want that to happen.
Right.
So my uncle John years ago would have been run afoul of this, I'm sure. So
Yep. So give us a call and we can talk through whether you come under the act and whether you're in compliance.
yeah, that's right. Anyway, I hope that helps. All right. So next we're looking at the Business Corporation Act.
Yeah, and so this one updates the requirements for sending notices. You can send notices electronically, which is already probably happening anyway by email. But I know sometimes some clients will ask us to prepare the formal notice in writing and send it by mail. You can do that now by email. It also provides that for new companies, unless the articles of incorporation state otherwise, okay, that action can be taken without a meeting of all the shareholders that are required. So, and it also no longer are you required to have the ink signatures of all of those shareholders showing consent. So you can accept consent by email, electronic notification of that.
Do you remember back during COVID days when people weren't meeting, obviously?
Yeah.
This became a real issue.
It did. It did.
And thankfully, there were some emergency rules put in place that were temporary. But, you know, a lot of folks didn't know what to do. A lot of companies had no provision for it in their
No, and the post office wasn't requiring signatures on certified mail.
Yeah.
So you would get green cards back, certified mail green cards back with an X or nothing on them. And you couldn't show that you had service.
Or the C-19.
Yeah. And the courts aren't accepting that as evidence of service.
No, didn't work.
All right. So the next one's kind of fun.
This is the freebie.
This is one of the freebies. Okay. So any fans of going to the beach in the summer? I'm sure there are many. Yeah, I enjoy it too. So if you go to Carolina Beach, Caswell Beach, Holden Beach, Kerr Beach, Oak Island, Ocean Isle Beach, Sunset Beach, or Bald Head Island, you need to be aware of this. So now between May 1 and October 31 of each year, it is illegal to catch a shark as part of a recreational fishing tournament where the person catching the shark is either on the beach or on one of our great piers. Now, my kids and I have caught many sharks over the years. You know, they're really, really big, you know, about like that big. Yeah. But if you're in a fishing tournament, you can't catch these sharks. It's a violation of this law. So watch out for that. Be careful about that, you know, coming this summer.
You know, I was thinking about, should we have put this, because it talks about sharks, should we have used that in this presentation today? I mean,
you mean with the lending?
All right. Anyway,
I can understand not wanting to have bloody bait out there while people are sunbathing and swimming in the ocean.
I do know one person that's on this webinar today is an avid fisherman, and they go to the beach quite often. They're really good at fishing. So just remember that you know who I'm talking about. So if y'all catch a shark, do take a picture and send it to me, but you can't be in a tournament to do that. So
all right.
All right, so let's look at judgment debtors and how they can make payments. So in the past, judgment debtor, once you say we got a judgment for you, someone did, the only way they could pay that was by virtue, if they were going to pay it voluntarily, is they could take cash or a certified check to the clerk's office to pay it. That was the only way you could do it, unless you had the execution with a sheriff or something of that nature. Now the statute has changed that they're going to allow folks to pay by a debit or credit card, which is really interesting. When JD and I were talking about this, we're like, well, why couldn't they reverse it? I don't know how that's going to affect, but you would think that could happen. But now at least the state says they can pay it that way.
So we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with it. So that's the great thing. And then unclaimed property division, right? So there's a few updates with that, right? So this law, is a House bill, allowed holders of unclaimed property to authorize a third party to send the notice and file the report. So I don't know if you remember, I can't remember how many years, it's been a while, where if you, for example, have, you can go online to find a sheet of property, put in your information to find out if you've got, say, a bank account or somewhere they just couldn't find you.
Utility company deposit.
Yeah. Well, it was unlawful at the time for someone to do that paperwork for you. And I think what they were trying to do was avoid having companies come in and say, well, you've got $10,000 over there. I'll take 5 of it and get you the other 5 or whatever.
Right.
They've changed that now to say that third parties can send a notice and file a report. And also changes reporting and notice requirements for unclaimed property and makes technical changes for the statute. So that came into effect in July of last year. So something to know about, right? And if, I'll tell you, it's worth checking it, because I know several clients and friends who have found money sitting there that they didn't even know they had, right? So
yeah, and if you lived in another state, maybe went to college in another state, had an apartment, maybe you forgot your deposit and it's sitting on deposit still today. So
yeah,
you can make that claim.
So, as we look through statutes, we always come up, and some of these stuff, right, it really does matter. So this one's going to be interesting. So
it is. And the timing of this is really interesting, James. I can't imagine why they made the decisions they did. But House Bill 347 authorizes sports wagering in North Carolina. I hear the cheering going on. It also authorizes pool betting or parimutuel betting on horses, which was legal at a Harrah's, one of the tribal casinos, but now it's going to be legal all over the state. And what's interesting about this is a lot of people are already using apps like FanDuel or DraftKings, but those will become legal in North Carolina. There are also several others like MGM and ESPN will have a betting app. But what's most interesting about this, James, is the date when this started. So the bill says that it's going to go into effect in the first half of 2024, but they've now announced the date it will start. Can you guess what that date is?
It's not Super Bowl, right?
No, it's actually March 11th.
Oh.
Do you know what happens on March 12th? It's the ACC basketball tournament. So
imagine that.
I'm not condoning betting, but just be watching for that.
Speaking of which, many of y'all know we have an ACC lunch party here at our office in Raleigh. We would love for you to come. You should have already gotten an email about save the date, but if you didn't, you'll be getting it. But you're welcome to come. It's on that Thursday that the ACC, the first Thursday actually, because they Wednesday too, I think, right? But it's the Thursday of the ACC tournament at noon. So we'll have great fun and a lot of good food.
It's always fun. Always interesting weather.
Yeah.
Remember that one time it snowed?
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah,
it is fun. So it'd be interesting. So, all right. So let's look at the next one. Surveyor's right of entry.
So this surprised me, James, when I read that they had to actually, this wasn't already a law.
Right, yeah.
You hire somebody to come out and do a survey of your land. Maybe you're getting ready to sell it or put up a fence. Mm-hmm. We put up a fence last couple of years, and so we had to have a survey done. So we made sure our property lines were correct. And it was actually not lawful for that surveyor to go on to your neighbor's property. Now, we asked our neighbors, could they, and they allowed it. But this bill now makes it legal for these surveyors to step on to neighboring properties while they're doing the survey and not risk liability for trespass.
Yeah, that's really, honestly, I would have thought that would have already been something that would have been approved.
I was surprised by it. Maybe you are too. Let us know.
All right. So the Corporate Transparency Act, I know probably a lot of y'all have already heard about that, right? It came into effect January 1st of this year. And it's really interesting. I feel like both sides of the argument, right? One, they say the reason they designed it and passed the act was to stop bad actors from owning, especially foreign entities or people from owning companies in North Carolina or across, excuse me, not North Carolina, across the country. And I thought, does this really do that? But maybe it does. There's also, I've heard a lot of people talk about, they felt like it's another effort of the federal government, but to put their nose under the tent of private business, right? I guess you could probably argue it either way. I mean, certainly, I can't imagine they don't already know most of this, but nonetheless, this is what it is, and we got to comply with it. So, as a result, many of the most legal entities formed and operating in the United States are now going to be required to file a beneficial ownership information report, and you got to file that with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which is a bureau of the Treasury Department. And they define that as somebody who owns 25% or more of the company, the shares of the company, or has a large impact in the business, right? Major influence. So that's how it's defined. The reporting requirements I thought were pretty interesting. So businesses formed after January of this year must report information about its beneficial owners, including the names, addresses, birthdays, identification numbers, and so forth. If you're formed between January 1st of this year and January 1st of 25, they've got 90 days to actually give notice of that to file. If you were formed before that, you'll have 30 days to file. That's companies formed, excuse me, after January 1st, you've got 30 days. If it was before January 1st of 24, you'll have until January 1st of 25 to report.
Get the whole year.
Yeah.
And that's a ramp up period.
That's right.
For those new companies.
So if you haven't heard about that, I hope you probably have. It should just put that in the back of your noggin. So it'll really be interesting to see, because I know we do a lot of annual reports with the state of North Carolina. Again, this is federal law. This is not state law. As to who will be doing this. Do the CPAs eventually take this on, or do law firms take it on, or do business owners take it on? And it's you actually can, if you, for example, have, I know a lot of you own your company, and you have maybe multiple corporations, you actually can go on to their database and create your profile, in essence, so that when you log back in, you can report your interest in the companies that you own versus having to go in and file each and every one different, which I thought was pretty cool, right? And so at least they had thought through that piece of it a little bit for multiple people that have multiple ownerships in companies, right? So if you're publicly traded companies or nonprofits or certain large operating companies, they are exempt. But for the most part, I bet you probably, if not, I'm guessing, I'm thinking about through the list of people that registered, probably I bet 100% of those folks will need to report. So many. Yeah. And of course, scams never stop, right? This is not unusual, right? So there have been a whole host of fraudulent attempts already to get people to send their information to groups that have nothing to do with the act. So the fraudulent correspondence may be titled or important compliance notice, and ask the recipient to click on a URL or a QR code. These are fraudulent. FinCEN does not send out unsolicited requests. They do not respond or to ask you to send information in this fashion, or click on things or use the QR codes. So if you see that, don't get tricked, right? I'm amazed at how often, right, when you have stuff like this happen, all of a sudden you get scammers.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Just like everything, think before you click. Just take a second, look at it, see if it.
How'd they get that information?
Right. And then, if there's another way to input your information, go ahead and do it that way instead of clicking on some link you receive.
Yeah. J.D. has helped in a case where there was a little bit different, but it's a scammer where there was a funds to be wired, and he was told, don't wire it, or don't change the wiring instruction. And he got something that said change it.
Yeah.
And he did.
And those were intercepted. Yeah. So we need to always be careful.
Anyway, That's the extent of the new laws that we thought really were important to you this year. Certainly, the legislature always is passing new laws.
Or fun laws.
That's right. That's right. So if you're gonna make any money on this, let us know. Right. We'd love to hear from you. So again, we thank you so much for participating. And JD, thank you always.
Thank you, James. We enjoyed it.
Hope you all have a great week, and we look forward to connecting with you again.